Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you a video where I recommend books based on my mug collection. I've chosen 10 of the mugs from my collection and I've got 10 books to recommend you based on the mugs. Some of the mugs are very specific to fandoms, but I tried to be a bit creative with how I recommended you books. We're going to start with my favourite mug, which is my Raven Cycle mug. I really love it because it just goes through every Raven Cycle book and it's got the item from the cover on it and it's put it all together and it looks gorgeous. So instead of recommending you the Raven Cycle, as I would probably do if I was, really recommending based on the mug, I'm going to recommend you a book that has to do with dreams, because in the Raven Cycle series, dreaming is a big running theme because of a certain someone, and so I decided I'm going to recommend a book based on dreams that I recently read and enjoyed, and that is Dreamology by Lucy Keating. So this one is a young adult contemporary, but it's kind of got some magical realism, fabulism elements to it, because the main character in this one dreams about this boy every single night. She's called him Max, and they go on adventures and they have really cute romance times, and she moves house to another city, and when she goes to school one day, guess who's sitting there in her class? Her dream boy, Max. And it's about what it means that he's suddenly there in class, if he's the same boy from her dreams or not, and how she's going to navigate everything that she learns in light of meeting him. So I really enjoyed this book. It kind of took me by surprise because I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did, and it was a lot of fun, and I would recommend it if you like young adult contemporaries and you're interested in dreams and dreaming like I am. The next mug is one I'm so excited to show you, and it's my Barred to the Bone mug, which features Shakespeare on it. I really wanted a Shakespeare mug, and this one just had Shakespeare on it. It says to be or not to be on it. It's got like the mask from theatre, and I think it does a fantastic job of being a Shakespeare mug, but not for a particular play. Rather than recommending you a Shakespeare play, because I want to do future videos on Shakespeare, I am going to recommend you a series by Doescher. So let me just put down the mug for a second because I have to show you these. They're not in a particular order. We've got The Jedi Doth Return, we've got The Empire Striketh Back, and we've also got William Shakespeare's Star Wars, which is actually the first one. I think these are backwards. I love Star Wars. I really love Star Wars. I really love Shakespeare. These books put them together. So if you know a lot about Star Wars, you might know that the creator of Star Wars also used a lot of Shakespeare. There's so many parallels that you can draw between Shakespeare and Star Wars, and this series draws them. They're basically retellings of the Star Wars films, but they're written in Shakespearean language, and it's a play script, and it's also got really nice illustrations which are done by an artist I really like. There are no bad illustrations on this book. They are all done so well. These, if you love Star Wars and if you have any inkling of enjoying Shakespeare or just comedy in general, you're gonna like these. The next mug I have to show you I got from my parents for my birthday, and that is my Penguin Classics mug. I chose A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I really like this essay. I think it's a really ahead of its time essay in terms of feminism, in terms of creative works and what is required. It is not intersectional feminism, but for its time she was already like way ahead, okay? So I'm gonna forgive that element to it, but I really do like that classic, and I really love Penguin Classics. I like the paperbacks, I like the cloth bounds, and I'm trying to collect them, but I haven't gotten very far just because I haven't focused on collecting them much, but I do collect them here and there. So rather than recommending to you A Room of One's Own, which I'm kind of doing sideways, like read A Room of One's Own, I'm also going to recommend to you one of the books from my Penguin Classics collection that I recently read and really enjoyed, and that is Paradise Lost by John Milton. I did not expect to love Paradise Lost this much, but I think I have a thing for early biblical retellings like Adam and Eve or the creation stories. I think I really like seeing those retold in the classics. Written in verse, so it's the classical like novel in verse. It's a Christian epic. Essentially it's a Christian epic that John Milton made, and it follows the fall of Satan, and it's about the Garden of Eden and the story that goes on there, and it was just everything I wanted. I really like the language and this kind of writing. I really like reading a different take on the Garden of Eden story. In this one, because you get Satan's perspective, you get to see what Satan's thinking and feeling and planning, and maybe the angels are not as perfect as you think they are, and it was just perfect. It was long, but it was worth every single bit of my time. It's split into books, kind of like how plays are split into acts. I think some of the later books were unnecessary and it was just like, okay, I'm just reading this, but it inspired me so much. The next mug I'm currently reading, this is the first bookish mug that was ever in my collection, and I am not going to recommend you what I'm currently reading just because I don't feel comfortable recommending what I'm currently reading because I don't know if I love it yet or not. It takes time, but I'm going to read a book where reading is a main part of it, and that is going to be Underneath It All by Patricia Vanasse. This is an indie author book, so extra reason to read it. Underneath It All follows London, who is this boy who gets accepted into a very prestigious school because he wins a competition, and he's not used to being amongst such rich children, and he gets sucked into the main clique in the school who are very broken, even though they're a tight friends group. And then a mystery happens and they're trying to solve the mystery, and it just escalates. This book was way deeper than I expected when I went in. I fell for all of the characters. I was so intrigued in what was happening. I wanted to know the answer to the main mystery that's put forward. I wanted to see if this friends group was going to survive everything that they were going through. It was intense, it was a lot, and I just did not expect to love this one as much as I did. There are some major content warnings. I'm going to try and warn them as best as possible down below. However, it has been a few years since I've read this book. Okay, the next mug I have for you is the only mug that I have with a lid, and that's my TARDIS mug. I'm a huge Whovian. However, my Whovianness is limited. It is only for Doctors 9, 10 and 11. 10 is my favourite Doctor. 11 I really like. 9 is just my OG. So for this we're going to time travel a little bit, and I'm going to recommend you a historical fiction book, and the book I'm actually recommending you is Blood's Game by Angus Donald. However, I don't have this book in physical form, so I'll hold up the sequel, which is Blood's Revolution by Angus Donald. But just know I'm recommending you the first book because that's the one I liked the most out of this series. So this one is set in historical England underneath Charles II's reign, and it follows what's happening in the royal palace under Charles II, and there's quite a conspiracy going around, but it also follows a gang of criminals who are trying to cheat their way into getting money and getting power, and it also follows the son of one of those criminals who is autistic. It's not explicitly stated that he is autistic, but if you read the author's note, the author does say he's autistic but didn't want to give it the autistic label because back in that time and that time period he would not have gotten that official label. So we're following all those three different scenarios, and they all tie in together perfectly with this conspiracy that's going on in the royal family, but I did not expect to care about our autistic main character as much as I did. I thought he was fantastic. I really loved his character. I really loved the ending of the series. The climax was full of suspense and it was so high and twisty and turny for me, and I also ended up really loving this gang of criminals and really caring about them, and I did not expect to love those grey area characters so much because they were not good people, but I was here and rooting for them. And I think this is an underrated historical fiction series. The second one's not as good, but it was still pretty good. I just didn't like what it did with a certain person's character, but it was still worth the time, and I do recommend this series to you. Next up, I have a mug that says no mourners, no funerals, and this is a Six of Crows mug. I got this as soon as I finished Six of Crows. I actually was looking for a Jesper mug, however I couldn't find any designs of a Jesper mug that I liked. I did see a lot of designs where Jesper was white, and I was like, why are they whitewashing Jesper's character? No thank you. So I couldn't get any of those ones, and then as well as that, the other ones I just didn't really like them, so I went for a one that said no mourners, no funerals, and instead of thinking of it as a Six of Crows mug, I always just think this is a mug that signifies my love of Jesper. The recommendation I'm going to give for you is to do with the quote though, because no mourners, no funerals is a way of saying I hope you survive, I hope you don't die. I chose a book about surviving, but also about not surviving in a certain way, and I'll leave content warnings down below, but that is Aftermath by Clara Kensie. I was taken by surprise with this book because the cover makes it look like a very young adult, contemporary, happy kind of book, but it's not that at all. It's emotional and it's hard-hitting, along the likes of Rome by Emma Donoghue. We follow our main character who is kidnapped as a child, and she's kidnapped and kept and continuously sexually assaulted by her kidnapper for years. For literal years. But we meet her at the beginning of her journey when her kidnapper falls down the stairs and dies. And once her kidnapper has died, the police come, find him, and also find her. So she gets returned home to the family that she has not been a part of for several years because she was kidnapped. And she comes back to a much more broken and a much more changed family than she ever expected and fantasized about all the time that she was in kidnapping. So essentially she's survived a huge traumatic and horrific experience, and she's also dealing with the repercussions of this experience, the mental strain and the mental effect that it has had on her, but not only on her but on her whole family. This book just tore me apart emotionally. I am not a crier when it comes to reading. I can count on one hand the number of books I've cried at when I finished reading them or while I was reading them, and Aftermath is one of them. That's how hard it was for me to read this book. But I do think it's a very good book, and it's emotionally draining, but it's worth the time and effort that it takes to read it. The next mug I have for you is the Rot and Ruin mug that I got in my Illumicrate unboxing. So essentially it's the mug that inspired this video completely. This one is based on a book by V.E. Schwab that I have not read myself. However, I have read two V.E. Schwab books, and those were This Savage Song and A Darker Shade of Magic. And both of those, the thing that I liked the most about the book was the world building, and also how you meet a particular character and you meet them in a certain light. So for example, they're a pirate or they're a monster, and so you have a stereotypical idea of what their character should be like, and then she proves to you that that idea you first had is wrong. They might be a monster in form, but that's not their personality. So I like that you meet a person and then there's something deeper to them and you feel bad for having judged them, and I like her world building skills. So I'm going to recommend a book that does both of those things very well as well. That is The V-Girl by Mya Robarts. I love this book so much. I read it once for review and I reviewed it, and I really talked to the author a lot about it, and I recently reread it and it was still so good, it was still perfect. So I was like, wow, this is perfect, and I'm going to recommend it to you. So in this one, it's set in a dystopian world, so it is a dystopia, and in this one, sex slavery is legal. At a certain age, girls can become sex slaves, especially for the troops of soldiers who are supposed to be protecting them. So it's a very scary time to be a woman in this dystopian world, and Lila is going to be of age when the troops reach her city. So what she wants to do is she wants to lose her virginity on her own accord and of love, rather than it being forcefully taken from her when she's in sexual slavery. So that's basically the premise of this book, but there's so much more because Lila has a lot of ties with her family. She also ends up talking and discussing a lot about sex, and that I don't see discussed a lot in other books. Even though she's quite young as main character, this is definitely new adult. I thought the romance in this one, or if you call it romance or what romance you do get, was very steamy and very well done. I really liked how it unpacked character, and the world building was A+, so I really recommend this book. I have a habit of collecting mugs and not really drinking from them, but this is one that's in drinking use, and that is my Penguin Winter mug. This one was gifted to me by one of my best friends, Yana, and she is absolutely amazing. And I switch and use this mug during the winter-autumn months, so that's when I use this mug and I drink all my tea from this mug. It can fit a lot of tea because it's really big. And for that one, I'm going to be recommending a book that's set during the winter time. I really wanted to recommend The Mercies, but I decided I would settle on recommending In the Midst of Winter by Isbael Allende. So this one is 3 characters who have a big backstory. They all come together over a death that happens, and the fact that these 3 characters have stumbled together and there's a dead body between them, and it's about what happened, how did they get that dead body, what are they going to do with this dead body, but also the backstories that have led them all to being in the same place at the same time and in the same situation. We follow 3 main characters. One of them is a refugee who has no documentation and she's just trying to survive in the US. One of them is from Chile, and she has got a very extensive past in Chile, which has to do with her family and also the missing peoples in Chile. and then the other one comes from Guatemala and also has some backstory there. So it was a very interesting book for me because I learned a lot about some countries in Latin America and some of the situations that they have there and some of the historical events that have happened that I didn't know about and I learned about through reading this book. I also really loved how integrated the cold and wintry setting was in this book. I think the setting was integrated well and it was beautifully described, and I also liked the look on character and how their characters developed not only over the course of this novel and the time period of the events that happen in this novel, but because you get to hear about how their backstories have made them are who they are today, you get to also see that longer character development from their backstories to where they end up at the end of the novel, as well as where you meet them in the novel to the end of the novel. And I found that duality absolutely and spectacularly wonderfully done. The second to last mug is the Algarve mug that I have. This I got when I was in Portugal with my family. I'm going to recommend a book which is set in a country, and like the country is a very big part of the book. That's going to be A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, and this is actually non-fiction. It's a pretty short essay, but it's not a pretty short essay, it's a pretty short book, but it's a long essay, and it's about post-colonization and the effect that it has had on Antigua. But Jamaica Kincaid talks about her history with Antigua and like her memories, but as well as it being a personal book about her memories and what she remembers of the thriving country, it's also about how colonialism has deconstructed it and essentially ruined the country and left it in a much worse state after they got their independence than when they began. And yeah, it was just beautifully balanced between her personal memories and her personal experiences and then the facts, the hard truth, what's left behind, what this means, and I thought it was fantastically done. And then last but not least, we have the most basic mug, but it is the mug that started off my mug collection. We have a lot of mugs in our house and I decided I wanted one that was mine, and I got this mug which says Shopaholic on it, and it has this lady shopping on the mug, and it's so basic, but this is the one that I use and have in use summer and spring. That book, I'm going to choose a book that I shouldn't have bought, but I did, because this is a Shopaholic mug. So you've known that I've been on a year-long buying ban, but to practice for my year-long buying ban, I did have a month break after my 6-month buying ban, and then I went on my year-long buying ban. But I had a false start with my 6-month buying ban. I saw that a book I really wanted was on a discount and I decided to buy it, and then I restarted my 6-month buying ban. So that's the Shopaholic element. I bought a book that I shouldn't have bought, and that book was Dracul by Dacre, Stoker and J.D. Barker, but I am so glad I bought it because I loved this book so much. So I'm a huge fan of Dracula and vampires. I really like vampires, if you can't tell from my Twilight Read It Backwards series, but just know that my love of vampires extends beyond the Twilight Saga, it goes to more books. And Dracula is one of them. I really love Dracula, and this one is a prequel to Dracula written by somebody who is related to Dracula, Dacre Stoker, Bram Stoker relation, and co-written by J.D. Barker. So Dracul is set before Dracula, and in this one Bram is actually a main character because Bram Stoker claims that the reason he wrote Dracula was because of true events that did happen to him. So this is the idea of what those true events could have been based on notes and research and ideas that Bram Stoker left behind in documentation. The vampire story that leads on to the creation of Dracula, and Dracula being the way that Dracula is. The authors did a very good job of writing in the writing style of Bram Stoker. They captured the atmosphere so well, and it was just such a good vampire story with just the right amount of slow, gothic creepiness that I absolutely loved in Dracula, and it was just everything I needed and more in this one. It is slow paced and steady, but it's kind of how classics are. Classics tend to be slow paced and steady, and it just captured that perfect. So there you have it. Those are 10 of my mugs and 10 books that I'm recommending based on those mugs. Please let me know in the comment section down below. Have you read any of these books? Are you interested in reading any of these books? And do you collect mugs as well? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't even forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!